Today is episode 21 with Dr. B.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, DDers, I am so glad that you could join me for today's podcast episode. You know, if you're like many of the adults with ADHD that I've known and worked with over the past 30 years, you have challenges completing tasks. In order to complete a task, you need to know what the completed task is. There needs to be criteria or something that tells you that you finished it. Now, it's important to note that task completion doesn't look the same to everyone. It just doesn't. What I say is a completed task of doing the laundry might not be what you say is the completed task of doing the laundry. Who's right? We're both right. In other words, task completion can be a very individual thing. The fine line or the challenge here is making sure that there's an agreement on what the completed task means, if there's more people involved than just you. Let me give you a quick couple of examples. If you're a parent and your criteria for your child's bedroom being clean is you say, clean up your room, and it's their bed is made, their clothes are all picked up and put away in the closet or the dresser drawers. Their dirty clothes are in a basket or a hamper. In other words, everything is returned to how it, quote, should be according to your criteria. But let's say that you haven't literally given this criteria to your child, or alternatively, your child's idea of how their bedroom should be according to their criteria is different than yours, because you and your child have a different idea of what task completion is for their bedroom. So what do? Well, this could be the basis for lots of battles if you can't reach a mutually acceptable task completion for the bedroom. Another example, if you live alone and your criteria for your home being clean when you say that you're going to clean up around your home is picking up all the trash that you see on the floor and moving things into piles so that you can move around your space more easily, and no one wants to come over to your home to spend any time with you because their criteria for a cleaned up home is much different than yours and it just doesn't work for them. Then what? You could find yourself spending a lot of time alone at home or always going over to others' homes to visit if you're firm about your version of task completion. So what is truly task completion? Well, you could say that there's my task completion, your task completion, and our task completion. In other words, I might have my standard, you might have yours, and we might have to negotiate a standard that'll be our standard when it affects both of us. When I think of my task completion from years ago, it was definitely different than it is now, meaning I lived in a cluttered and disorganized space with no systems or methods for that chaotic life that I lived. I hadn't yet established homes for things, and my things didn't have curfews yet, and I hadn't clearly defined what the criteria for a completed task would be for me to feel good about how I was living my life and maintaining my environments. There were many considerations, first being whether I was a high or low maintenance person, whether I wanted a high or low maintenance life, and whether I wanted a high or low maintenance environment. Answering these questions for myself was the first step, because until I knew this information, I couldn't decide on what my criteria was going to be for me, for my life, and for my environment. I got clear with all three of those realms, my overall life, my environment, and me, and all of them had high maintenance needs for me to feel comfortable. Go figure. Acknowledging the truth about my needs and meeting them allows me to live my best life instead of living in a constant struggle with myself. And what is the point in that? It may take more time for me to maintain this type of lifestyle than others in their chosen lifestyle. However, the benefits for my quality of life are priceless to me. with very clear criteria and boundaries of what constitutes a completed task for me, I see tasks through to completion, and I don't have to circle back to them later, and I actually end up with a lot more free time and definitely less stress. Plus, my environment no longer looks like a little kid's space where there was a trail of stuff moving from room to room, indicating where I'd been doing my stuff throughout the day and not completing things. It's kind of sweet to think back on how I used to live. I just didn't know any better at the time. And as with other areas of my life, my values had a lot to do with my criteria and follow-through for task completion. What was negotiable or non-negotiable in terms of my values? Well, certainly once I was clear about my needs in order to live a successful and less stressful life, I had to categorize those in the non-negotiable category because they were sacred. So if you're relating to one or more parts of my story here, please know that there is real hope for you to change and freedom from the many realms of incomplete tasks that may have taken over your life too. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. As I've said so many times before, I'm a work in progress just like you. And there's still times when pressing matters come into my life and I get off schedule and I don't get all my tasks completed on time. And some even come right down to the wire, just like they used to years ago. When that happens, I get to re-experience just how stressful it is to live that way, and I get myself back on track. I know that I might be making this sound like it is so easy to just get back on track, when it isn't easy for you. Well, I've had years of practice with the systems and the structure that I use, so things don't stay incomplete for very long. Remember, I wasn't born knowing about the systems and the structures I needed to have in place to protect myself from incomplete tasks and homeless stuff, and neither were you. So as long as you're teachable, you can learn just like I did. We're getting closer to today's 3 important points with relevant stories, an action step, and a favorite quote of mine. Let's keep going. In case you're going and feeling like this is going to be so much work, or that you've had problems with task completion your entire life, and this just isn't going to change for you, is that really the way that you want to continue to feel about your life? Do you want to continue to drop the ball on task after task and just keep accumulating more and more unfinished tasks that only serve to make you feel really bad about yourself instead of advancing your life to where you want it to be? I hope that you want to learn about task completion and what you might have been missing all these years that's actually going to help you now. And once you discover what the keys to task completion are for you, you're going to be glad that you were willing and open-minded. And while you're getting to those keys, I suggest that you take advantage of your naturally curious nature to become a student of your own life and to learn as much as you can about what makes you drop the ball and accumulate so many incompletes. Is it you choosing again? Or is it you not seeing the path from start to finish? Please be patient, since these challenges didn't just happen yesterday. And make sure to reward and encourage yourself with every little step that you take on this task completion journey, because you feel bad enough about yourself as it is. And you don't need a punishing attitude or an angry and disappointed self to boot. Remember, focus on your wins, every single one of them. I want you to remember that you are not what you do or don't do. You're more than that. We are not defective or less than as people, as human beings. We're just wired differently. And that difference is actually pretty cool once you have a different perspective and you have the tools that you need for your own success. And in this case, it's whatever you are going to need to consistently complete tasks and feel good about doing so. Otherwise, why bother, and what is the point? So in this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at why not completing tasks can be so damaging to your mindset and your quality of life, and what you can do about it. And knowing is only the first step. The next step is taking action on what it is that you know to get started getting new results, fine-tuning your process as you go along, and get better and better results. You know, it's a process, so please don't let yourself off the hook here with taking action once, not getting the results you hope for, and stopping there. Seriously? Did you learn to walk or tie your shoes with just one attempt? I know I didn't, so keep going. You're learning to do, not just standing up and doing like you've known how to do it your whole life. Let's get real here. Transitioning to our 3 important points for today. How not knowing and not mentally seeing the sequence can derail you. How being out of agreement with yourselves can lead to defiance. And how learning to task complete and doing so can give you more freedom.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. It's almost story time, but first, you need a win. You need to remember and acknowledge and celebrate at least one thing that's good about you or has gone right for you today. Just one thing. Perhaps you're learning to smile more often. That's a win. Or maybe you're able to wake up earlier in the morning and start your day off with something meaningful to you. That's a win. Or maybe you signed up to take a class that you've wanted to take for years. That's a win. Or maybe you finally realized and accepted your part in how people are treating you and decided to make the changes you need to make. That's definitely a win. Whatever you choose, it's up to you. However, I want you to choose something right now, and I want you to celebrate it, either aloud or to yourself. I want you to have a win and acknowledge that at least one thing has gone right in your day. One thing is right about you. Even if you're surrounded with years and years of incomplete tasks and you've hurt your personal or work relationships by not finishing what you start, those facts do not take away from the fact that at least one thing has gone right today or is right with you. You are a precious child of the universe and are called a human being, not a human doing, for good reason. You don't have to earn your value. You were born with it. Your value comes from who you are, not what you do. Got it? I hope so, because you're going to keep hearing me say it over and over again, because it is so important to your self-esteem and your quality of life. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why you might be surrounded with years and years of incomplete tasks. And I'm going to share 3 stories with you today, as well as talk about your responsibility in this. That's right, responsibility, or your ability to respond, since you're not off the hook here. And I hope that at least one of these stories is going to resonate with you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. Shifting gears to our first story. Andy had been stuck for years. He knew that he was smart enough, that he had taken plenty of classes on how to get organized, stay organized, make a plan, stick to the plan, and get things done. He conceptually knew everything that he needed to know, yet things weren't getting done. What other classes could he take? What was still missing after all these years of studying and working hard on improving his life? He was soon to find out when he just happened to watch a video that talked about sequences and the need to see them in your mind. Andy was puzzled. Sequences? He knew what a sequence was, but he was puzzled as to how it related to his being stuck. He did know that he wasn't very good at imagining or visualizing stuff in his mind. At least that's what he believed. He had tried listening to tapes in the past that instruct him to imagine what he would when he was doing something, and he could again conceptually think about doing it, but to actually see it in his mind's eye, it just wasn't happening for Andy. In the video, they had referred to a book written by Napoleon Hill entitled Think and Grow Rich, in which he said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Again, Andy was puzzled. He began to think about this statement quite seriously and concluded that if this was true, he could not conceive of what he wanted to do in his mind, let alone believe that he could do it. Then, according to Napoleon Hill's statement, his mind would not be able to help him to achieve his task completion. So great. Now Andy knew what part of the problem was, but he didn't know how to help his mind conceive of his tasks completed, nor believe that he would complete them. He wondered if he had to trick his mind into seeing and believing. No, that wasn't the way. Some background facts. There are fields of study about the mind that look at the conscious and the non-conscious functions of the mind. The non-conscious part of your mind, and my mind, they don't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined, when what's imagined is done so vividly with the same energy as the real experience. That non-conscious part of my mind or yours operates by association and not by logic or thinking. It associates that something looks like, acts like, smells like something else, and so it associates that it's the other thing. It's a pretty cool system, really. In fact, this is one way that high-performing athletes get the great results they do. First, they imagine themselves performing flawlessly over and over again, habituating the pattern or the sequence of success for them. Then, when they go to perform the task or the sequence in real time in the real world, they've already practiced it with perfection so many times that it's much easier to be successful when they associate into the task in real time. So what can you do if you relate to Andy's story? Well, we have 2 more stories before I get to some action steps, but they're coming. So let's transition to our next story. Billy had the best of intentions, yet she had over 20 years of incomplete tasks to her credit. The truth is that if the good intentions are only part of her internal selves, then those that aren't happy will defy and sabotage her efforts, which is exactly what had been happening for the past 20 years or more. She'd been labeled oppositionally defiant since she was a kid. And now, at age 24, she was no closer to being on the same page with herself than she was when she was 4. Billy didn't understand why her teachers or friends or family couldn't understand that she was struggling and not trying to be difficult. She really wasn't. She felt that they thought that her defiance was intentional and nasty, which was anything but the truth. She wanted to complete things because the more times that she didn't, the more things kept piling up and the more backlog that she had to look at and try and figure out how to get rid of it. Not only was she unable to be a willing participant in her own life, she was a major saboteur of her own efforts. What was even worse is that her parents had gotten her help when she was younger, and she had learned what she was supposed to do to complete tasks. She knew the steps to take, how to follow through, how to not choose again, and derail herself, but her problems were coming from some other source. She didn't lack the knowledge or the steps. She lacked internal cooperation. Some background facts. With ADHD, it's often said that just because you know how to do what you need to do doesn't mean that you can or will do it when you need to do it. That just couldn't be truer for Billy. She had all the best strategies and steps to take and could see what they were and when they needed to be taken, but she still wasn't able to take them. Sometimes you just need to dig a little bit to find out what's the real problem, and that was the case with Billy. Perhaps it's true for you. Billy learned that she was resisting her own instructions or direction because she didn't trust herself to get it right. She knew all the steps and the things to do, but still was unsure of herself. If someone else would just tell her what to do and when to do it, like they did when she was getting help, then she could do what needed to be done with no problem. And since she was older now, and her parents had long since stopped hiring people to help her because they felt that she'd learned everything that she needed to know and had demonstrated that she could do the work and complete the tasks, she looked like she hadn't learned anything at all and that her parents had wasted their money on her. And their less than loving approach only served to bring out the oppositionally defiant traits in Billy and make things worse for everyone. So what can you do if you relate to Billy's story? Well, we have one more story before I get to some action steps. They are coming. Let's transition to our next story. Catherine wasn't raised with any guidelines or strategies for completing tasks. In fact, both her mother and her father hardly ever completed tasks. Growing up, she experienced what a negative effect it had on their marriage and family life in general, and it left her with a huge Swiss cheese kind of gap in her adult skills, making it nearly impossible for her to advance in her life. When Catherine turned 18, she decided to move out of her parents' home and move in with a friend and start some serious work on herself, away from all the negative influences of her family. She found and signed up for a course that promised to teach her about task completion, what it is, and how you learn to do it. Catherine was thrilled. She also saw that there were other skill-building courses that were offered, but that was for after. She laughed because here she was with her usual behavior, trying to get her to not even do the first course and already starting to look ahead to whatever else was available. The course also included information about managing herself in time, how much time she actually had, and how much should actually be put into a day if she was going to be successful at completing her tasks. Catherine learned that today starts the night before, and she would have to learn how to complete her day within the time that she had and go to sleep on time so she didn't jeopardize the next day. She learned about making a plan to give her a direction, but that the plan might not always work out the way that she planned because things do happen unexpectedly. She was taught to take it in stride and not be upset when that happened, as it didn't mean that she had failed, just that the plan would need to be adjusted due to unforeseen tasks and events. Nothing she did wrong whatsoever. Learning this was a huge relief because she was so used to blaming herself when things didn't work out. She was a bit of a perfectionist. She learned to time things, to learn how long something actually took for her. This would give her the data that she needed to plan to complete her tasks. If she didn't know how long something took for her, she wouldn't be able to have enough time to complete things. Catherine learned that some things were much faster to get done when she got right to it, rather than dragging it out for hours or even days. She learned that only about 75% of what she wanted to put in her day would actually fit in her day and get completed, and that extra 25% that she was trying to stuff into her days was what was actually causing her to not get her tasks completed, and hence get further and further behind every day. This was really good for her to learn the source of her problem so she could control for it. Some background facts. Catherine's story is such a perfect example of us being teachable and being able to learn as an adult what wasn't learned as a kid. What also stands out in Catherine's story is that she was motivated. In other words, she had a good enough reason to take action. Her reason was that she didn't want to inherit, by default, the life that her parents had lived. She never saw them enjoying life, and she wanted to enjoy her life and be successful. An important reason that this is a motivating reason is that it's not an away from motivation, meaning she wasn't learning these skills because she was repelled by her parents' life and behaviors and wanting to get as far away from them as she could. She was motivated towards a more successful and joy-filled life than she grew up in. She was hungry for the kind of life that she watched her friends have and knew that she would have to work hard to get it for herself because she didn't have the upbringing that they did that helped this along. Catherine didn't mind the hard work. It was worth it because shortly after she started the course, she noticed that she was feeling more calm and certain that her life would work out okay if she just put one foot in front of the other and learned what she needed to learn to graduate into a more fully functioning life. She felt it was totally worth it, and after a few months, she could see that she had already been having an easier time of it and even able to have some additional free time for herself. This was a first for Catherine, and she wanted more of it, so she kept going. Some action steps. It's your responsibility to get the information and training that you need. In other words, your ability to respond to your needs and to meet them. The good news about task completion is that it can be learned at any age, and if you're willing to be a student of your own life and open-minded about what you need to learn, you can learn it. Task completion is about follow-through. Follow-through is about keeping your word to yourself. Keeping your word to yourself is about respecting yourself. Respecting yourself is about knowing who you truly are. Knowing who you truly are is about being able to separate out the difference between being a human being and a human doing, and valuing yourself for being, not doing. As with a previous episode, it's important to know that the more complex your life is, the more tasks that you'll have to complete and the more things that you'll have to juggle and maintain. And similarly, the fewer tasks that you have, the less that you have to maintain. Everything you bring into your life takes a piece of your life to maintain, whether it's a task or a passion. If you relate to Andy's story, your action step has 3 parts. Focus your attention on mentally seeing the sequence of task completion for something simple and determine if you can see it in your mind's eye or not. Make notes of what you can see, if anything. Follow through and run the sequence in real time and see if anything's missing or stops you from completing the task. In self-management, it's very important here because you're likely to get worked up about what results you get unless you can manage to be somewhat detached from your results. This is just about getting the facts, the data, if you will, so that you can know more accurately about what the challenges are and get to the real solutions. If you relate to Billy's story, your action step has 3 parts. Focus on where you feel that the defiance is coming from. Follow through once you know, and be willing to come up with real solutions to the real problems that you're facing. In self-management, if your defiance is coming from immaturity, you're going to need to accept that fact and become more mature. If your defiance is coming from a lack of leadership from yourself, you may need to step into humility and accept that you're going to need to have someone to tell you what the sequence is and what to do and when to do it until you can develop the skills to do this for yourself. If you relate to Catherine's story, your action step has 3 parts. Focus on the most frequent tasks that you've left incomplete over the years and make a short list. Follow through on learning what the entire sequence is for the first task and see the entire sequence mapped out in front of you or in your mind's eye. Familiarize yourself with the entire sequence and how it feels to you. Self-management. This is a very new experience for you, since you didn't grow up in a household of people who completed tasks, and certainly not in a space where task completion was celebrated. You're going to have to manage your feelings and stay very present while you're learning these new skill sets and behaviors and getting good at them. Be proud of yourself. Really, really proud of yourself. So remember, your needs matter to me. If I'm going to help to make a real difference in your lives, I need to hear from you, and I need to know what your challenges are, what you're struggling with. And to help me to know, I created a quick little survey where you can tell me what the number one biggest struggle or frustration is that you have right now and a little bit about it. It's only 6 questions, really quick, and you can be as brief as you want. The link to the survey is in the podcast description, it's in the show notes, and it's on today's post on my website. I hope that you can take a few minutes to respond to the survey. Thanks in advance for your participation and for helping me to help you even more. A favorite quote of mine. Zig Ziglar said, "When obstacles arise, you change your direction to reach your goal. You do not change your decision to get there." The question I have for you at this point in our journey together is, when obstacles have arisen for you in the past, have you just quit instead of changing your direction? And if so, are you ready to take a new approach starting today? I appreciate you showing up to listen today and in the future. I have some special episodes in the works for you, and they'll be coming soon. For now, the new episodes are released on Mondays and Thursdays. As a subscriber, the newest episode will be in your feed by 1 a.m. Pacific time. Plus, you won't miss out on any of the extra special episodes that I create with guests, as well as some of the other different types of episodes. Certainly a good reason to subscribe. Perhaps make a date with yourself to listen to each podcast episode so you hear your questions answered, if you asked any, for the Ask Dr. B format, or just enjoy all the episodes, where I'll be talking about such compelling topics as making friends, seeing the path, making a plan, and more in-depth separate episodes as a spin-off from episode 13's multi-level topic. So if you enjoyed today's episode or any of the other episodes, please share this podcast show with your family and friends, as well as rate the show. And if you'd like to do a little more, write a thoughtful review on iTunes so I know that I'm meeting your needs. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy, just a line or two of how the podcast is helping you, if it is. I love hearing from you and learning how the podcast show is benefiting you and those you care about. You know, it means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. If you want to participate in my quick little survey, receive periodic updates on new happenings with Dr. B, or just download your show notes, you can do all of that on my website, as well as learn about other services and resources. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.